653.
Megillas Esther, Torah and Megillas Esther, page 180. 4 lines from the end of the paragraph, on the top. So here the Alter Rebbe is explaining, the last thing the Alter Rebbe is explaining, that Torah is Mamala Kol Almin, mitzvahs come from Sefer Kol Almin, okay? So he says that Sefer Kol Almin is the infinite level of godliness coming into the world, okay? Why? Because it's the will of Hashem, not the intellect of Hashem, but it's the willpower of Hashem. And he says, because mitzvahs have this level of godliness which is Sefer Kol Almin, which the definition of Sefer Kol Almin is the highest and the lowest are the same, because it's above everything. He says, therefore, the lower the thing, he says, on the contrary, the lower the thing, the higher the source of it is. So a mitzvah that comes down into even a lower substance, because let's say you have an inanimate plant, animal, and human. You can have mitzvahs that have to do with human, animals, plant, whatever. So, and he's going to explain why. But bottom line is, Sefer Kol Almin, everything is equal, but the revelation is more down here than anywhere else. Like the Fried Rebbe says in Basi Lagani, the Rebbe elaborates on that because the person is the one, through Avodah, bringing down the Sefer Kol Almin, we're the one that brings it down. So even though it's a revelation which is Sefer Kol Almin, everything is equal, but the fact that we bring it down here shows that it comes from a higher level, which explains why Dira B'Tachteinim, as Alter Rebbe uses the expression in Tanya, Shein Tachton Lamata Himeno, not Stam low, that there's nothing lower than that level. That's where the ultimate highest level of Elokus is. That's why you have the concept what's called Self Ma'aseh Machshava Tchila. You have Noitz Tchilosin V'Seifim B'Tchilosin. You wedge the end in the beginning and the end. Bottom line is that, on contrary to Mamala Kol Almin, where the higher level is greater than the lower level, but in Sefer Kol Almin, the lower level is higher than the higher level. Because the lower the level, the higher its source. So he says, B'nei alahod of Hamshachazu, and this revelation, Shebchin is Sefer Kol Almin, that comes from Sefer Kol Almin, Shein alahod ba'alma, which is only a ray, because again, infinite cannot be revealed as is in finite, not yet at least. That's what it says, Hashem malach geirus lavish. Hashem puts on the garments of glory. Like we say, Yochid Chei Olam Melech. We say in Baruch Shama, Yochid Chei Olam Melech. Yochid means there is no world, and then you have Chei Olam, the life of the worlds, which is Melech. So Yisparich Yochid Umiyuchid, that Hashem is unique, singular. Hulavade Kamekedim Shinivra Olam. Yochid means even now that there is a world, there's only Hashem. Like we say, like it says, Ato Kedem Shinivra Olam, Ato Mishinivra Olam. It doesn't only mean you were there before, you're there now. What it actually means is the same way you were there before the world, i.e., you were the only thing that existed. Ato Hu Mishinivra Olam. Now that there is a world, you're the only thing existing. Or like we say in Vayivarach David, Ato Hashem Levadecha. Levadecha means alone. There is nothing else. Not you are one. That's the difference between the meaning of the word echad and the word yachid. Ki milas echad, just in Hebrew language, yeah? Echad meir al hamshachas yichudi yizbarich. Echad is Aleph Ches Dalet. So we learned in Shechanach, it says, Aleph is the one Hashem, Ches is the 7 heavens and earth, and Dalet is the 4 corners of the world. So what are you supposed to think when you say Echad? It says in Shulchan Aruch, you have to think that the 7 heavens and earth and the 4 corners of the world, meaning basically all 6 directions, northwest, southeast, up and down, are all subservient to the Echad, to the Aleph. Which means, he says, this level of Yachid comes down into Zayin Akiyim Va'aretz, the Ches, and Daled Ruchis Ha'elam, the Ezbetein Levinechlolim, that they should be bottled. B'yichud Al Yizbarach in the level bit of his Galus Mamish, V'leitefis Malkum, that world doesn't exist as a Yeshud of a Nifrit. So Echad means, even the higher level of Echad means, that everything which exists is completely bottled to Hashem. But by definition, Echad means 1, which means there is automatically an ability to have 2, 3, 4. When you say this is one Sefer, that doesn't negate there's 2, 5, so on, 10 to 100 Svarim. When you say this is the only Sefer, Yachid means there is no world which is even bottled to that. Masha'en ken Yachid meid al Yichudi is Baruch HaEmes. Terem shenimshach ba'ilmis. Before it comes down into the world. Shulevadihu, that he is the only thing existing. Lakach achad b'riyaselim is therefore after creation, ein eid mulvadei. There's only Hashem himself. Ein eid mulvadei doesn't only mean there's nothing else but you. Then Tanya, the Alter Rebbe explains, the Gemara has an expression, Yehuda v'eid l'kra. V'eid means in addition to. Ein eid mulvadei means there's not even something secondary to you. Ein eid doesn't mean there's nobody else. There's even deeper than that. Ein eid means there's not even anything secondary to you. There's only you. Not that you are number 1 and there is second, third, fourth, 10th, 100th. So he says, like says the Kula kamei kol choshev mamish. But so what do you say? Chei ha'elam melech. He says shenim shechli is chei ha'elam melech. It's only the level of melech, which is malchus chamalchus kol elamim hainu kamei hamelech hameshul medina. It's like a king that rules a country. Yeah. The king doesn't travel the country. The king, when he controls the country, sits in his palace and he gives orders, he speaks. Like it said, just his name, the king said, the king said, the king did. Melech Shmei Aleim, Krein Malchus, Tefez Gedulose, Hom is Pasha B'Medinase. Not the king's essence. The king's essence is in the palace. The king's name, so to speak, is spread out throughout the country. That's the way the world, the country listens to the king. The king, is his pashtus malchus his nasusman, is the manifestation of his malchus. In other words, because like we say in David, Hashem is right after Baruch, right? Amelech Amreimam Levade Mioz Hameshubach Vamefayar Vamisnasi Mimei Selam. Misnasi means he is removed Mimei Selam from the spheres that created the world. Mimei Selam, the yom of the world, which means the 6 and 7 spheres that created the world. Hamisnasi Mimei Selam, that Hashem is above that any level of connection. But how does the king come into the country to rule? How does the country function? That's through his name. And he says, his nasis, which is a ha'adas ayim mamish. So he says like this, Yochid cheyo elam melech. Okay? There's Yachid, like we said, there's nothing else existing. So if so, Chei Olamim, so how does Hashem give life to the world? If he's completely removed, he's Yachid, there is no world, So how is Chaya Elamim? So the answer is that's the level of Melech. That's why it's interesting. If you notice, most Nuschois in Baruch Shama, they say, Yachid Chaya Elamim, stop, Melech Meshubachim Fer Adiyad. In Chabad, it's Yachid Chaya Elamim Melech, period. Meshubachim Fer Adiyad. Why? Because the way the Alter Rebbe is explaining it now, that's what it is. It's Yachid. Hashem really is nothing to do with the world. I Chaya Elamim. How does he give life to the world? Is Melech, to the love of Malchus. What's his Malchus speech? Speech is like the king. He gives his name, the orders. Or do what I want you to do. Meaning, the actual Chayis of the world is only a revelation of Elokus.
I thought you don't believe in that. I thought Judaism believes that Hashem is involved in every second of life.
Correct.
But he's not removed.
No. 1 second. But this revelation of Elokus, i.e. the ray of the sun, is in the sun, because Hashem's all over. So when does the ray of the sun become a separate entity? When it leaves the sun. When the ray, the Alter Rebbe says, that if the ray can shine millions of miles away, in the sun for sure it exists. But in the sun, you don't say, oh, there's the sun and the rays. When you look at the sun itself, there's the sun, which means the rays are completely bottled, non-existent compared to the sun. But when the rays leave the sun, that's when the rays become something. In the sun, they're nothing. Now, so the Alter Rebbe explains in Shayach of Amuna, the truth is, by Hashem and his rays, you can't say there's Hashem and the rays leave the sun, because Hashem's all over. So that means the revelation of world, which is existing by the name of Hashem, i.e. the rays of Hashem, i.e. the level of Melech, is really in the Melech, in the essence. We only see a ray, not the essence. That's the whole concept of Tzimtzum. That Tzimtzum is only from our perspective of looking at life. From our perspective that Hashem created, that we should have this perspective, we think that we exist from the ray of Hashem, meaning we do exist, and that Tzimtzum is only from our perspective, not from Hashem's perspective. From Hashem's perspective, there's only God. From our perspective, Hashem created because he wanted a dir b'tachtainim. So he wanted that there should be such a low world that not only we don't feel the revelation of godliness, we can even come along and chas v'shalom say there is no God. Right? And in that world, he wants that we should reveal, in other words, remove the covering, i.e. the tzimtzum, and reveal the reality of Ein Oid Mulvadai, and that will be revealed when Mashiach comes. That's what he's saying. That's what mitzvahs are all about.
You learn that potential is koach, right?
What?
Potential is koach.
By Hashem.
Correct.
Ein koyach chassid poil. Yeah. That's in Elokus, not down here.
Could there be, prior to Bria, prior to Bereshit Bara, could there be anything existing in potential that's above Zaman and time? Zaman and Makom.
Above Atzilus is above Zaman and Makom.
The Gashmi.
The truth is, actually, Zman begins in Bria,
Correct.
not in Atzilus.
Right,
Yeah.
so could there be anything in Koach, in potential, that's above Zaman and time? Zaman and Makom. The Gashmi, not the Ruchni. Prior to Bria.
Prior to before Hashem made the world, there's no Gashmis. What is your question?
That was my question.
No.
Because it's a Koach in potential. There is Koach there.
You know, every pasuk in Torah, or in Tanakh, yeah, in Hayom Yom Revi b'Shabbos, from Tilim, yeah, he says, "Anei ta'ezen halo yishma." If God makes ears, can he not hear? Hayotzer ayin. If he conform halo yabit, doesn't he see? What's David HaMelech saying there? The concept of l'mayla ein koyach chassid poil, the by Hashem, the potential is not like by us. There's potential. I could potentially go, and then I can actually go. By Hashem, the potential and the koyach is all the same thing.
I don't know. Okay,
So that's what he said. Hayotzer ayin halo yabit means that in the potential of making an eye, the potential of making halo yabit, there is already the boil there. Because there's nothing but Hashem. The Gashmi, Baruch Hu, in essence. That's why Torah mitzvahs is dafkin Gashmias. Because the true test of the relationship between Hashem and Jews can only be in the low things. A Gashmistic mashal of that, the true test of relationship, whether it's between spouses, parents, teachers, whatever it is not in the big things. It's in the day-to-day simple relationship. Not the anniversaries, the birthdays, all that stuff. In the true test of relationship is not once a year, Father's Day or Mother's Day, or you buy a tie and that's it. You spit in the face the rest of the year. We're not talking about that. And nobody wears ties today, so you buy him something else. But the point is, the true test of relationship is in the day-to-day simple living. In the lowest of things, that's where the true test of a relationship is. I.e., who's going to take out the garbage? In the lowest of things is the true test of the relationship. Come on, there's much greater things than that. But a relationship that comes down to the nitty-gritty, that comes from the highest source of the relationship. And the same thing as in Torah mitzvahs. Dafkin the Gashmis is where it works. But he's saying the role of a Jew, okay. So he says, Vizel ki levadi marim v'kodesh. That's what we say in davening. Hu levadi, after Baruch Hu, right? Hu levadi marim v'kodesh. Hashem himself is exalted and holy. Poel gevures, does wonders, strength, the strong thing. Lemelech kel chai v'kayim ram v'nisa. Okay? By the way, we say, Hadaras Amuna l'chai olamim. Okay, l'chai olamim simply in the English is translated who lives forever. Right? Abin of Abracha l'chai olamim means the one that lives forever. But in Lashon Kodesh you have, in davening you have chai olamim and you have chai olamim. Chai olamim, there's a world, and he gives life to it. Chai Olam means he is the life of the world. It means the world is him. It's two different things. You can have a world, and the world is given life. You can have a body, and the body is given life by the neshama. But the body is one thing, the neshama is something else. Chai Olam means that the world is him. That's Yachid. In Shema we say Echad. Even though Yachid is greater, but there's still an advantage of Echad over, like everything is. There's still an advantage of Echad over Yachid. Because if you say a store is doing, we said this many times, if a store is doing well, but it's the only store in the neighborhood, So the store is doing well. Okay? It's the only business in the neighborhood. It's doing well. That doesn't show the greatness of the store. There's nothing else, so what do you want? But what happens if comes competition in, and still the store is number one? That shows the greatness of the store over the fact that if it's be the only store.
He's gonna make less money.
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. It's still number one. Yachid means nothing else exists but Hashem. Great. But what would be if there's competition? There's cars and food and money and there's competition to God. We don't know how he would be. Would he still be number one? So Echad in Shema means there are 7 heavens, there is an earth, there is the 4 corners of the world, there is time and place, and yet he's Echad. So there's an advantage sometimes of Echad over Yachid. So in Shema, Chassidus explains, why don't we say, all the Mefarshim ask, why don't we say Shema Yisrael Hashem Hashem Yachid? It's much greater than Echad. Because over there in Shema we're realizing another greatness of Hashem. That even though seemingly there's competition, he's still Echad. Yachid means there's nothing else. Okay, there's nothing else, no. How would it be when competition comes? We wouldn't know.
How is it a competition? All of that is him also. Everything else is him.
Do you realize that? Feel that?
No, but it's...
Okay, so no. So that's the competition. What we feel is what we are. So as far as I'm concerned, there's competition to Hashem. Gashmius is a competition to Hashem. So what's Dira B'Tachteinim? In this Gashmiistic world that's competing against God, you show that really ain't Eid Mulvada.
Wow.